Welcome, you questioners, seekers of truth with a capital T, pilgrims longing for sanctuary, travelers needing harbor from the storm. Welcome those who are holding on by a thread, determined breakers of the chains of loneliness and isolation. You push through your fear because something told you that you deserve to belong. Welcome home. Welcome those who braid ropes again and again. You've been there for our siblings who are just hanging on. You gave them a hand into community and told them they could rest here. Welcome you who seek spiritual and religious community for your children and grandchildren. You entrust your young people here, and we, as a community, commit to nurture and respect them. Welcome, children and youth. You give us the gift of your wisdom, your joy, your curiosity, and your trust that we will hold all of it safe. Welcome, welcome home. How do we make this tender place wider? How do we stretch into a bolder welcome, a radical generosity of the heart? Can we imagine ourselves the stewards and ushers not only into this space, but into our circle of belonging? Can we commit and recommit to being accountable to one another as an anti-racist, anti-oppressive community that centers marginalized voices, that listens to those voices, especially when what they are saying is hard to hear? Can we be willing to change? When we break our agreements with one another, can we offer amends? Can we be humble and generous? There is grace enough here. There is in this place the possibility of healing, of repair, of making things right within ourselves, between us, and with the wider world. There is in this place possibility. Welcome home. Hear these words for our lighting of the chalice. What if when I light the chalice, you hear an invitation to welcome gratitude for the earth? This week, as I was getting ready to light the chalice, I thought of the many blessings from this planet. And here is a partial list of the ones that I thought of. Rich soil, good food, majestic forests, waving grasses of the prairies, sunsets in the Wichita Mountains, and thousands of bison return to the Great Plains. And now, with this flame of hope shedding light in your heart, what is your list? Let us join together in the spoken affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth and freedom, and help one another. Our opening thought comes from Aldo Leopold from his work, A Sand County Almanac. There are two spiritual dangers in not owning a farm. One is the danger of supposing that breakfast comes from the grocery, and the other that heat comes from a furnace. To avoid the first danger, one should plant a garden, preferably where there is no grocer to confuse the issue. To avoid the second, one should lay a split of good oak on the andirons, preferably where there is no furnace, and let it warm one's shins while a February blizzard tosses the trees outside. If one has cut, split, hauled, and piled one's own good oak, and let one's mind work the while, one will remember much about where the heat comes from, and with a wealth of detail denied to those who spend the weekend in town astride a radiator. Our first reading comes from Rachel Carson from her work, Silent Spring. We stand now where two roads diverge, but unlike the roads in Robert Frost's familiar poem, they are not equally fair. The road we have long been traveling is deceptively easy, a smooth superhighway on which we progress with great speed, but at its end lies disaster. The other fork of the road, the one less traveled by, offers our last, our only chance to reach a destination that assures the preservation of the earth. Our second reading comes from J. Baird Callicott from his essay, Conceptual Foundations of the Land Ethic. The logic of the land ethic is that natural selection has endowed human beings with an effective moral response to perceived bonds of kinship and community membership and identity. That today, the natural environment, the land, is represented as a community, a biotic community, and that therefore an environment or land ethic is both possible and necessary. Our meditation this morning is Manitongwat's prayer. Hear, O humankind, the prayer of my heart. For are we not one? Have we not one desire to heal our Mother Earth and bind her wounds? And still to be free as the spotted eagle climbing the laughing breath of our Father Sky. To hear again from dark forests and flashing rivers the varied, ever-changing song of creation. O humankind, are we not all brothers and sisters? Are we not the grandchildren of the great mystery? Do we not all want to love and be loved, to work and to play, to sing and dance together? But we live with fear, fear that is hate, fear that is ambition, competition, aggression, fear that is loneliness, anger, bitterness, cruelty, fear that is mistrust, envy, greed, vanity. And yet fear is only twisted love, love turned back upon itself, devouring itself, hating itself, love that was denied, love that was rejected, and love. Love is life, creation, seed and leaf and blossom and fruit and seed. Love is growth and search and reach and touch and dance. Love is nurture and succor and feed and pleasure. Love is pleasuring ourself, pleasuring each other. Love is life, believing in itself. And life. Life is the sacred mystery, singing to itself, dancing to its drum, telling tales, improvising, playing, and we are all that spirit. Our stories, all but one cosmic story, that we are loved indeed, that perfect love we seek, we are already, that the love in me seeks the love in you. And if our eyes could ever meet without fear, we would recognize each other and rejoice, for love is life believing in itself. O humankind, we must stop fearing life, fearing each other. We must absolutely stop hating ourselves, resenting creation, life. O humankind, life is the only treasure. We are the custodians of it. It is our sacred trust. Life is wondrous, awesome, and holy, a burning glory, and its price is simply this: courage. We must be brave enough to love. Hear my heart's prayer, O humankind. Trust in love. Don't be afraid. I love you as I love life. I love myself. Please love me too. Love yourself. For perfect love, as a wise one said, casts out all fear. If we are to live, there is no other choice, for love is life believing in itself. Above all, let us set the children free, break the traps of fear that history has fashioned for them, free to grow, to seek and question, to dance and sing, to be dreamers of tomorrow's rainbows. And if we but give them our trust, they will guide us to a new creation. For love is life, believing in itself. As I bring the message this morning about land, I'm aware that the land upon which I live is the land of indigenous people who lived here long before I did, and their land should never have been taken away from them. Nor should have any of our indigenous siblings been removed from their lands and forced into reservations or territories that were not their homelands. Any discussion of land here in the United States must be mindful of this fact and witness to repenting from it and restoring as much justice in relation to the land and to indigenous people as is possible. I'm also mindful of the strain that we are currently putting on the land. Fires in the west and floods in the east, erosion of soils and expansion of deserts, overuse of fertilizers and agricultural methods that degrade the land rather than restore it. May we also be mindful of these ways that we are not respecting the land and seek ways of restoration and regeneration. I want to include in my words this morning some words from the Hebrew scriptures, from Leviticus chapter 25, verses 1 through 7. The Lord said to Moses on Mount Sinai, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, once you enter the land that I'm giving you, the land must celebrate a Sabbath rest. You will plant your fields for 6 years and prune your vineyards and gather their crops for 6 years. But in the 7th year, the land will have a special Sabbath rest, a Sabbath to the Lord. You must not plant your fields or prune your vineyards. You must not harvest the secondary growth of your produce or gather the grapes of your freely growing vines. It will be a year of special rest for the land. Whatever the land produces during its Sabbath will be your food for you and for others, for your hired laborers and for foreign guests who live with you, as well as for your livestock and for the wild animals in your land. All of the land's produce can be eaten." I also want to include another reading from Aldo Leopold from his work, the Sand County Almanac. The land ethic simply enlarges the boundaries of the community to include soils, waters, plants, and animals, or collectively the land. The land ethic changes the role of Homo sapiens from conqueror of the land community to plain member and citizen of it. It implies respect for one's fellow members in the land community and also respect for the community as such. For the last 24 years, I have been teaching a course on environmental ethics at Oklahoma City University. And I've probably taught the course at least 25 times now. I've lost count. And each time that I teach it, I ask students on the first day of class to tell me what they think the most pressing ecological problems are that we are currently facing. The students' answers are often quite insightful, and they cover a wide range of significant challenges that we are facing in the world today, including climate change, air and water pollution, overconsumption, deforestation, the loss of biodiversity, and extinction of species. But it's interesting that very few students mention anything about the soil or anything about soil degradation as being one of the most pressing challenges facing the world today when it comes to the ecology. This is perhaps understandable. It is dirt, after all, and it is not one of the more exciting ecological challenges that we face. It's also the case that over the years, a decreasing percentage of my students have actually had their hands in the soil in any meaningful way, and very few of them are involved in farming or gardening. Whatever the reason may be, soil degradation is not on too many people's radar screen, much less high on their list of most pressing ecological problems facing us today. But that being said, soil degradation is still one of the most significant ecological challenges of the 21st century, whether we recognize it or not. Eduardo Mansour of the Food and Agricultural Organization with the United Nations reminds us that, quote, we are celebrating a treasure beneath our feet, which hosts a quarter of the planet's biodiversity and provides about 95% of our food, end quote. Yet this treasure beneath our feet is under threat. According to the United Nations, every 5 seconds, the equivalent of one soccer field is lost due to soil erosion. Soil erosion is not the only threat to richness and the health of our soil. We have significant problems with our industrial farming system, a system that is extremely hard on the land. With monocrop farming, overuse of fertilizers, farming methods that are overly disruptive of the soil and contribute to soil erosion and degradation, and an animal agricultural system which uses more land for agriculture than is actually needed to sustain human life, we find ourselves in a situation in which soil degradation is happening so rapidly that many United Nations scientific experts fear we may not be able to sustain agriculture at a level necessary to feed our growing human population through the end of this century. This is the bad news. But the good news is that we can all participate in something like Sabbath-like practices for regenerating the land. We can all become involved in practices that contribute to the regeneration of the soil and therefore the regeneration of the land. We can support local organic farming and non-till farming, composting, permaculture, and agroecology practices. Interestingly, all of these practices are proven to grow food more efficiently and with much less impact on the land than industrial farming. In our local communities, some of the most important things we can do for the land and its soil are to participate in composting, support community gardens and urban farming, and we can also take more time to get our own hands into the soil, to grow our own food and to become more connected and reconnected to the land. For many of us, this may be like a kind of homecoming after many years away. And for others, it may be an experience of discovery of a brand new world in which we come to understand dirt is not just dirt, but rather a rich and diverse community of life. I can imagine that the Red River UU community has some excellent resources for this kind of work, for composting, urban farming, and getting your hands in the soil. I encourage us all to make use of these resources and make connections with groups that are involved in composting and making connections to urban farms and community gardens for things like composting and urban farming and opportunities to get our hands in the soil and to learn how we might be able to grow our own gardens, grow our own food for ourselves, our families, and our communities. And if we do all of these things, not only will we be regenerating the soil and bringing richness and diversity back to the land, we will also be cutting the use of synthetic fertilizers and pesticides, and we will all be using less fossil fuel. So we get an even greater return on our investment with better soil, regenerated land, and a way of living and being that will help mitigate climate change, which is an existential threat to all life and the most pressing ecological challenge that we face in the world today. So, what are we waiting for? Let's get to it. Let's get our hands back in the soil. Let's all find our best ways to contribute to a Sabbath rest and regeneration of the land that needs it so much. May it be so, and peace be with you.
For every sea, to our God we sing, returning home to our blue-green hills of earth. For the mountains, hills, and pastures in this silent majesty, for a life, for all of nature, sing we our joyful praise to thee, our joyful praise to thee. For the earth forever turning, for the stars forever sing, to our God we sing, returning home to our blue-green hills of earth. For the sun, for rain and thunder, for the seasons harmony, for the stars, for all the heavens, sing we our joyful praise to thee. For the earth forever turning, for the skies forever sing, to our God we sing, returning home to our blue-green hills of earth. Home to our blue-green hills of blue-green hills of earth.
Our parting thought comes from the Aboriginal wisdom of Janini Gandhara. The land is my mother. Like a human mother, the land gives us protection, enjoyment, and provides our needs, economic, social, and religious. We have a human relationship with the land, mother, daughter, son. When the land is taken from us or destroyed, we feel hurt because we belong to the land and we are part of it. Let us extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
As we approach Thanksgiving weekend, we have a lot to be thankful for in this country. But we also know we have a lot of work to do if the country's going to reach its full potential. And we can be overwhelmed by it because, after all, we're just one person, each of us. Now, my mother told me some things that weren't quite true. She told me that if I ate my bread crust, I would get curly hair. But she told me some things that were true, like you can't do everything at once, but you can do one thing at once. Join me and the Red River Unitarian Universalists this Sunday at 11:15 when we talk about doing one thing at once, doing small things with great love, so as to get back great things with more love than you can imagine. I'll see you then.